Have you ever heard of the Berserkers, the legendary Norse warriors who fought with a terrifying animalistic fury? But what if I told you the truth behind these legends is far stranger, more spiritual, and more profound than you can imagine? Today, we're not just talking about wild men in a rage. We're journeying deep into the Norse world to uncover the secrets of the Úlfhéðnar, the elite wolf warriors, the shapeshifters of the Viking Age. This isn't just history. It's a journey into the heart of a warrior's soul, where man and beast become one. So grab your shields and let's uncover the true story of the wolf warriors. Our journey begins not on the battlefield, but in the realm of the spirit. In the Norse world, your destiny wasn't just chosen, it was revealed. This revelation often came through a mystical concept known as the fylgja. Imagine a spirit animal, but so much more, a supernatural double, a fetch, that walked alongside you from birth, invisibly shaping your life. For most, this spirit might be a goat or a hawk, but for a select few, their fylgja was something far more formidable, a wolf or a bear. Seeing your fylgja was a momentous, often terrifying event. It was a glimpse into your own soul and your ultimate fate. For a young Norseman to see a wolf as his spiritual double was a sign. It meant he was marked by the gods, chosen for a life of sacred violence. He wasn't just a fighter, he was destined to walk a path of primal power, a path that would lead him to become one of the Úlfhéðnar. This wasn't a curse, but a divine calling, setting him apart from all other warriors and initiating him into one of the most feared brotherhoods in history. The appearance of the wolf spirit wasn't the end of his journey. It was only the beginning. So how does a man chosen by a wolf spirit actually become the wolf? How do you cross that sacred, terrifying boundary between human consciousness and the primal mind of a predator? The answer lies in one of the most mysterious and potent practices in the Norse world, cider. This was Norse magic, a ritualistic art of trance and prophecy, and for the Úlfhéðnar, it was the gateway to the beast within. Forget what you've seen in movies. This wasn't about incantations and spells. It was a deep psychological and spiritual transformation. The process was an assault on the senses, designed to break down the walls of the conscious mind. Imagine a dark, fire-lit clearing deep in the woods. The air is thick with the rhythmic, hypnotic beat of drums, a constant driving pulse that mimics a racing heart. This is layered with guttural, monotonous chanting, sounds that vibrate through your very bones. The goal was to induce a trance state, to disconnect from the mundane world and open the mind to the spirit realm. It was here, in this altered state of consciousness, that the warrior could finally invite his fylgja, his wolf spirit, to rise up and take control. To push them further into this trance, some historians and scholars speculate that psychoactive substances were used. Think of mushrooms or potent herbs, known to ancient peoples for their mind-altering properties. These would have shattered the last vestiges of human reason, blurring the lines between reality and the spiritual plane. This wasn't a reckless act. It was a carefully controlled ritual. The cider trance was the crucible, the sacred space where a man's identity was dissolved so that the raw, untamed power of the wolf could be born in its place. The warrior had opened the door. Now, he had to embody the beast. Once a warrior had communed with his wolf spirit, he needed a way to physically manifest that connection. This is where the pelt comes in. For the Úlfhéðnar, the wolfskin was not just clothing or camouflage. It was a sacred uniform, a tool of profound sympathetic magic. When a warrior draped the pelt of a wolf over his shoulders, he wasn't just dressing up. He was performing a ritual act, declaring his bond with the animal and inviting its essence into his own body. Think of it this way: by wearing the skin, you are becoming the skin. The pelt, complete with the head and bared teeth, was a powerful symbol. It told allies and enemies alike that this was no longer just a man. This was a man who had shed his humanity to become a predator. The act of putting on the pelt was the final step in the physical transformation. It was a bridge between the spiritual trance of the cider and the violent reality of the battlefield. The warrior looked in the mirror and no longer saw himself. He saw the wolf staring back. He could feel its strength, its stamina, its ferocity flowing into his own limbs. The pelt was the key that unlocked the animal's power, allowing the man to embody the wolf's spirit and unleash it upon his foes. Now, the final, terrifying moment has arrived. The warrior has connected with his spirit, entered the trance, and donned the sacred pelt. All that remains is to unleash the fury. This was the Berserker Ganga, literally the Berserker March, or frenzy. It was a process of working oneself into a state of pure, divine madness, known in Old Norse as Odr. This word is the root of the god Odin's name, and it translates to frenzy, rage, or inspiration. For the Úlfhéðnar, it was all three at once. Historical accounts, from Norse sagas to Roman chronicles, describe this transformation in chilling detail. They speak of men who would start to tremble and convulse. They'd howl like wolves and, in a now famous act, bite the rims of their wooden shields, splintering the wood with the force of their jaws. This wasn't just for show. Psychologically, these actions were self-stimulation techniques, flooding the body with adrenaline and pushing the warrior past the limits of pain and fear. Their body temperature would rise, they'd cast off their armor, feeling impervious to harm. In this state of Odr, the warrior was no longer fully human. He was a vessel for the god fury, an unstoppable force of nature on the battlefield. He fought with the strength of 10 men, immune to the sting of blades, his only purpose to destroy everything in his path. This was the terrifying pinnacle of the Úlfhéðnar's art, a complete surrender of self to a divine bestial rage. It was this god fury that forged their legend, a legend that echoes with fear and awe to this very day. From a spiritual calling to a terrifying battle frenzy, the path of the Úlfhéðnar was a journey into the deepest, most primal parts of the human psyche. They were more than just warriors. They were shapeshifters, mystics, and living embodiments of the untamed Norse spirit. What do you think? Was it magic, psychology, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Welcome back to our journey into the heart of the Viking Age. We've traced the origins of the Berserker, but now it's time to witness their true purpose, the battlefield. They weren't just warriors, they were the ultimate shock troops, a human tidal wave designed to crash against and shatter enemy shield walls. Imagine the scene. A line of hardened soldiers, steady and prepared, when suddenly from the opposing ranks a handful of men begin to howl like wolves, bite their shields, and charge forward with no regard for their own safety. This wasn't just a fight, it was psychological warfare. The sheer terror they inspired could break an enemy's morale and send them fleeing before a single sword was swung in earnest. Stories abound of their superhuman abilities. Tales tell of berserkers immune to steel and fire, shrugging off wounds that would fell any ordinary man. How much of this is fact, and how much is the fog of war and legend? While they certainly weren't magical, their state of frenzied rage, possibly self-induced, would have flooded their bodies with adrenaline. This could have dulled pain to an incredible degree, allowing them to fight on, despite grievous injuries. They weren't invulnerable, but to the terrified soldier facing them, they might as well have been. Their goal was simple: create chaos, punch a hole in the enemy line, and allow the main Viking force to pour through the breach. They were the key that unlocked the enemy's defenses, a terrifying, unstoppable force of nature. But what goes up must come down. The Berserker's trance was a deal with the devil, a temporary loan of immense power that had to be repaid with interest. The aftermath of the rage, what we might call the Berserker's hangover, was as devastating as the battle itself. Once the adrenaline faded and the trance broke, the warrior would collapse. This wasn't just simple exhaustion. It was a profound physical and mental shutdown. The physical toll was immense, pushing the human body to such extremes, ignoring all its natural limits, would lead to torn muscles, strained organs, and complete energy depletion. They had essentially run their internal engines into the red for hours. This period of weakness left them incredibly vulnerable, a stark contrast to the invincible warrior they had been just hours before. The price of their fury was a heavy one, a period of utter helplessness that underscored the unnatural intensity of their battle trance. It was a brutal cycle of godlike power followed by pathetic frailty. So how do you control such wild, untamable energy? You give it a purpose and a chain of command. Astute Norse kings and chieftains saw the raw power of the Berserker not as a threat, but as an asset. Instead of letting these fearsome warriors roam as unpredictable wild men, they brought them into the fold. This is how the Berserker evolved from a lone wolf into a member of the king's personal guard, the elite herdmander. Imagine being a rival jarl or a foreign dignitary visiting a Norse king. You're escorted into the great hall, and standing by the throne are not just guards, but towering figures known throughout the lands for their battle madness. Their very presence was a political statement, a symbol of the king's power and ruthlessness. By incorporating berserkers into their personal retinue, kings achieved two things. First, they gained the most loyal and terrifying bodyguards imaginable. Who would dare attempt to harm a king protected by men who felt no pain and feared no death? Second, they harnessed and legitimized the berserker's wild energy, channeling it towards the protection of the crown and the stability of the kingdom. Their fearsome reputation became a tool of statecraft. No longer just a warrior cult, they became an instrument of royal authority, their ferocity now wearing the king's colors. It was a brilliant move, turning a force of chaos into a pillar of order. But the world was changing, and the age of the Viking was drawing to a close. A new power was sweeping across Scandinavia, not with axes and longships, but with the cross and the book. The Christianization of the North marked the beginning of the end for the old ways, and for the Berserker. In this new Christian social order, there was no place for pagan rituals, shamanic trances, or warriors who drew their strength from a heathen rage. The very things that had once made the Berserker sacred and revered now made them demonic and dangerous. The Berserker was recast. He was no longer the sacred warrior of Odin, but a dangerous criminal, a holdover from a barbaric past that the new rulers wanted to erase. Laws were passed specifically outlawing going berserk. What was once a source of honor on the battlefield was now a crime punishable by outlawry or death. The saga of Grettir the Strong tells of such a fate, where a man known for his berserker tendencies is eventually hunted down and killed, his strength seen as a menace to civilized society. The berserker, the wolf-skinned warrior, became the hunted wolf. He was purged from the New World Order, a casualty of a cultural and religious shift that had no room for his untamable spirit. And so, the berserker fades from the historical record, slipping back into the mists of legend from which he came. From a sacred warrior channeling a god to a king's elite guard and finally to a hunted outlaw, their story is a dramatic arc that mirrors the rise and fall of the Viking world itself. They were a product of their time, a brutal, superstitious and violent age that required men capable of extraordinary feats. As that age ended, so too did the need for such men. But their legend endures, a testament to one of history's most fascinating and terrifying warrior archetypes. The howl of the berserker may have fallen silent, but it continues to echo through the sagas and in our imagination. Have you ever wondered how a hero becomes a monster? how a figure of reverence can be twisted into a symbol of pure evil. That's exactly what happened to the legendary Norse Berserkers. For centuries, they were seen as Odin's chosen, holy warriors channeling divine power. But then, everything changed. As Christianity spread across Scandinavia, a new narrative was forged. In the Icelandic sagas, penned by Christian writers, the Berserker was systematically stripped of his sacred roots. The spiritual warrior was gone, replaced by a one-dimensional bully, a mindless brute, a villain in a world that no longer had room for his gods. This wasn't just a change in stories, it was a deliberate act of historical erasure, staining the sacred pelt of the wolf warrior forever. This historical smear campaign wasn't just on paper, it was a death sentence. The rise of centralized Christian kingdoms in Scandinavia marked the beginning of the end for the old ways, and for the warrior cults that embodied them. The final stand of the Berserkers wasn't fought on a glorious battlefield against a foreign army. It was a desperate, brutal struggle for survival against their own countrymen. Hunted like animals, outlawed and driven to the fringes of society, their traditions were extinguished. Using archaeological clues, like strangely buried warrior graves, and piecing together fragmented saga accounts, we can reconstruct this tragic final chapter. It was a slow, agonizing extinction, a last defiant howl against a world that had declared them obsolete. The age of the Úlfhéðnar was over. But did they truly vanish? Not exactly. Their spirit, now twisted and feared, seeped into the folklore of the new Christian Europe. The memory of the fearsome warrior who wore the skin of a beast and fought with inhuman rage was too powerful to simply disappear. Instead, it was absorbed and transformed. The Berserker archetype became the monstrous blueprint for some of our most enduring legends. Think about it. The man who transforms into a wolf possessed by a savage, uncontrollable fury. The Berserkers' legacy became the werewolf myth. Their divine frenzy was reinterpreted as demonic possession. They were no longer Odin's champions, but devils in human form, haunting the medieval imagination long after the last true Berserker had fallen. The warrior had become a monster, a ghost story told to frighten children. So the question remains, is the Berserker truly gone, or does that primal warrior spirit still echo within us? This brings us to the modern world, to the heart of human conflict. We look to the psychology of soldiers in the heat of battle, studying the phenomenon known as combat rage. It's a state where a soldier can push past the limits of fear, pain, and exhaustion, acting on pure instinct and aggression to survive and protect their comrades. They describe a narrowing of vision, a distortion of time, a feeling of being an unstoppable force. Does that sound familiar? While today it's controlled, studied, and channeled, this raw, primal power is the very essence of the Berserker gang. It seems the Úlfhéðnar, the wolf warrior, never truly left. He's a fundamental archetype of the human psyche, a dormant echo in our blood, waiting for the call of the drum and the roar of the fight. The warrior spirit endures. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into the heart of the Berserker legacy. If you found this exploration as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.